Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. This week, my choice for a Christmas movie, bit of a different approach to a Christmas movie, I feel. It's Gremlins. It's one of my favourite childhood movies, nearly surpassed by its sequel, which I assume at some point we'll get to, which is, I mean, if you think this movie's crazy, Gremlins 2, the director didn't really want to do it. He didn't want to do a sequel. It's a parody of this one, essentially. It's really insane, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But just a genuinely, in my opinion, brilliant Christmas movie that I have a strong connection to from my childhood. Obviously, we talked about this last week. For anyone who doesn't know, though, Chris has never seen it before, to my surprise. So I'll very briefly go through my childhood history with this film, and then I just want to know what you thought. I'm really curious if this holds up or not, because it's very blatant when I'm watching it. I can tell that so much of this is just pure nostalgia running for me. It'd be very interesting to get your opinion and check if I'm a crazy person or not. I mean, it's a very popular movie. It's getting a 4K re-release this year, and tickets for that are selling like crazy. So, I know that it's still very fondly thought of in the hearts of many. They do a yearly screenings in the original 40mm print at the Prince Charles Theatre near where I live in London. So I know that it's, I know that it's still beloved, but how much of that is nostalgia and how much of that are people just who love the movie? Does it work if you see it today? So we'll see. But in terms of how I stumbled across, I honestly don't know exactly how I found it. It feels like this movie was always in my life. But I remember the very first time I saw it being so horrified, not by any of the gore or the gremlins attacking humans or any of that stuff. Just the premise of a creature that's out to get you, that can multiply with water infinitely. That is and was such a scary concept that I would have almost recurring nightmares as a kid about. And it was the creature or thing was different every time. But the idea of something with that ability to just get in water and then there'd be thousands of them everywhere. Because it was that idea of being outnumbered. It's one of the things that people used to talk about made the Daleks quite scary, wasn't it? It was like that there was lots, when there were lots of them, you'd always feel overwhelmed by it in Doctor Who. So I at some point I caught this movie on VHS or something, and then I was just obsessed and I absolutely loved it. It's because as a kid I really liked that it was super dark. And we've hit a theme with the movies I like as a kid being like movies that are probably a little bit inappropriate for someone of the age I was watching them, because I would have been watching these at like 8 or 9, maybe younger, and it's probably a little bit older than that. It's not as bad as RoboCop for sure, but this one's great, I think, for kids because it's very dark in some really surprising ways, but it is also extremely silly, especially towards the end. It's like a cartoon come to life in parts. Someone bumps their head and you hear the little Tweety birds going around. Things like that. It's quite cartoonish. So I think I see exactly why this still worked. Oh, not still. It's worked for me so much as a child because that combination of it being a darker film with that kiddiness that's silly, that's fun. That makes so much sense that would have been right up my alley as a kid. So I don't have any necessarily specific memories connected to it, but I just remember loving it and watching it year on year on year. And the sequel, I was just as obsessed with the sequel. In fact, I think I can never decide which one I prefer. This one's like a more straight like horror movie, and the second one is like a parody. The director prefers the second one because he got to do what he wants. So I'm definitely torn between which of them I like best, and scene to scene it changes. So I was watching this one, I was like, I think I prefer the second one, and then the Christmas Carol scene happens, and I'm like, okay, no, I prefer this one. This is nuts. And then I'm like, another scene happens. Maybe I do prefer the second one because there's this scene, and then there's they're all singing hi ho in the cinema. I'm just like, no, it's this one. This is insane. So I flip back and forth between the two, but it's clear that I'm very passionate about these movies. But Chris, put me out of my misery. What did we think? What did we like it? No.
So I went into it expecting it to be my experience of watching Ghostbusters as an adult, which was just like, I kind of get it. I can see why people like it, but I don't think it's amazing. And it's, I just being like, I don't connect to this at all. I get it. Like, I can see why if you watched it as a kid you would, but as an adult, for me, Ghostbusters was like, okay. And I expected to go in and experience that with this, but I actually really enjoyed it. Had a
That's very good.
really good time watching it. It's nuts. It's the different twists and turns it takes. Like,
yes.
When, like, my mouth was actually gaping open on a few occasions. I think the first. So, what do you want to explain the plot, and then I'll.
Oh yeah, because we've made that mistake a few times where we've gone in and then I've had to interrupt with the plot. So for those who don't recall, but and by the sound of what Chris just said, I think he agrees. And this is, if you've not seen this, go see this. Go watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
You might be able to see it in cinemas depending on when you hear this, because like I said, there's a 4K re-release that's been going into cinemas, where we are now in November, early December. So that might still be showing in theaters near you. If not, get hold of the DVD, get it on Amazon, Netflix, wherever it's available. Just have a look. Totally worth watching. But for those who've seen it but don't really remember, Billy Peltzer, struggling artist / bank clerk or whatever, his dad, who's an inventor, is desperate to find him a really unique gift, and in Chinatown found this mysterious sort of shop of antiquities that has this creature called a mogwai in it. The guy won't sell it, but the guy's kid knows he needs the money, so he backhandedly sells him the mogwai, even though he's definitely not supposed to. The reasons why become clear later. It has 3 rules: cannot eat after midnight. Can have to be midnight. Exposed to bright light will hurt it. Sunlight will kill it. And then water. Don't get it wet. Those are the 3 rules. So naturally, all of those rules get broken pretty quickly, and it turns pretty chaotic, because it turns out the mogwai multiplies when it gets wet. Obviously, the bright light we've already established can kill it. And if you feed it after midnight, it metamorphosizes into a gremlin, essentially a monstrous creature that's out to cause mischief. I kind of love them when they're in that form, because they're comedic as well as dangerous, which is just a funny combination. But Billy, not as responsible as maybe he thought, looking after the mogwai. It gets wet, they multiply. The ones that come out of Gizmo are not quite as nice as Gizmo, and they trick Billy into getting them fed, and chaos ensues in the town as they multiply and cause all sorts of problems. Obviously connected to the old idea of a thing having bugs in it being called, it's got gremlins. There's a lot of them messing with technology, which is a theme that gets really expanded on in the sequel. But and then it's up to Billy to save the town from the gremlins. I think that's about right, isn't it? I don't think I've missed anything major.
That's a good description of the plot. Yeah.
Cool.
So it's sort of it has the moments where I was like, huh? Was when the mum starts fighting him.
Yes.
Was
that got a cheer when I saw that in the cinema about 2 years ago.
Was just amazing. I was like, fucking hell, this is taking a turn. Like, all right. The cinema, partly because it was just like, it's one of those moments where the characters in a movie perfectly echo your thoughts as a viewer, which was, they're in the cinema, all of them. Like, I was a bit like, that's not really explained, but all right. Like, they're all over town, and then they all decide to go into the cinema. Like, because I'd been thinking the moment, because another moment was when it goes in the swimming pool and you realise it's gonna multiply to hell, and you're like, and I think the reason I was like all of them with the cinema is because when that happened, I was legitimately like, fuck, how are they going to get out of this?
Yes.
Now there's hundreds of them. How are they going to get out of it?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure if they all happen to go and see Snow White is the best explanation, but it's certainly one that fits in the context of the film and the tone that the film sets for itself.
Yes.
And without a doubt, I think my biggest moment, because, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what it added, the darkest Christmas tale of all time, which is the female character, his sort of
Phoebe Cates' character,
Phoebe Cates' character, yeah. Sorry, I don't know her name. I don't know. I didn't realise he was called Billy until you said.
I know a lot of the names. He's Billy Peltzer. There's the Fuddermans, is the family, the grumpy drunk guy that hates foreign technology. Like, I've seen this movie far too many times. Is what we're learning. Carry on.
So her story,
Yes.
big spoilers, because you really, really seriously pause and watch the film if you haven't seen it. But her story about her dad's death
Yes.
on Christmas Eve,
That ends with her being like, and that was the worst. It ends with her going, and that's how I found out Santa Claus wasn't real.
That's the bit that got me, as well. Like, my mouth was ajar for the whole story, and then at the end, where it's like, that's what you're taking from this. Like, that's your big sort of depressing fact of this. That's how you realise Santa wasn't real. But it didn't. I don't know what it added. Like, that's just like it. It goes from like gentle family movie to horror to just bonkers.
Yeah,
to just madness. I disagree with anyone that says it's not a Christmas film. I guess maybe my only sort of bar is it set in Christmas? Cool. I consider Iron Man 3 to be a Christmas film, so maybe I've got a low bar of it. But Christmas is referenced a lot. A lot of its value. It's a dad trying to do a nice thing for his son.
Yes.
It's his son learning a lesson. Mm-hmm. He gets the girl. Like it's warm. It's a friendship. It's a friendship story between Mogwai and Billy. It's absolutely a Christmas film.
Yeah, I agree. I always consider. I mean, one of the major action set pieces is the tree attacks Mrs. Pelzer, and it's got a gremlin in it. Which, by the way, one of the best. That whole sequence when she first has to deal with them. Which, by the way, this movie could have been a lot more violent. The original script was horrendous. Apparently, we'll get to that in the trivia. I had no idea.
It's fairly violent.
It's mate. It's okay. Well, let me give you a teaser. In the original script. And this is just a script. It never got to any. They never filmed any of this. The Gremlins were going to kill the dog and behead Billy's mum and throw her head at him from up the top of the stairs. Yeah. And Spielberg, who was a producer, was like, "We're toning that down. Let's hit middle ground between horror movie and family movie. Let's go somewhere in the middle." So yeah, they found. I think they found a perfect balance in the end. I think the head thing would have been far too much. I think, even as someone who loves this movie and loves that it's dark and violent and then silly, I like it's a combination of tones that on paper does not work, but in practice here absolutely comes together gloriously, in my opinion, in such a sort of fun, definitely silly way. So yeah, I think that gory stuff would have been a bit too much. But yeah, I could totally see these scenes being quite surprising and jaw-dropping. But I like. Another one that was in the original script was that the guy who took the blood sample from one of the Gremlins, when Billy went in, he was supposed to have tons of needles in his face.
Oh God!
Yeah, that was apparently also removed at script stage rather than shot.
That seems kind of crazy because it is clear. This is a random comparison, but one of the cleverest decisions the Lost pilot made was that people were dying all over the place, but until that person got sucked up into the wing of the, you know what I mean, into the propeller, you didn't see any blood. Mm-hmm. What's crazy about that scene is it's clear these gremlins are killing folk, but that's the only time it's really laid out there. Do you know what in my opinion?
No, I 100% agree. It's
which is a really interesting decision. Yeah.
Well, it allows them to bring two characters back that should not come back in the second one.
Who comes back in the second one?
I'll tell you now. The Fuddermans come back despite
Brilliant.
the plow being driven through their house and it being very evident that they were supposed to be dead.
Yeah, but I would believe that more than if they brought back the teacher.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. No, the teacher very clearly laid out is dead. Yeah, no, they do it because they know it's within reason. But I think the intent in this original film was that the Fuddermans are gone, because there's the bit later where the police officer answers the phone and he goes, "What's that? A plow? Oh no, the Fuddermans." And then he puts the phone down and it's like, and he's going. It very much seems like
the policemen are useless. It's amazing.
Yeah, the police are so useless to the point where when they start realizing that Billy's right, all the police officer can think to do is, "Can we go back to the station?"
Yeah, I want to go back.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Also, those characters don't come back at the end. Like you don't see them again, and you'd think you would if they were meant to be alive.
Yeah. Apparently, the original cut of this movie was 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Wow.
And you can kind of tell because in the opening 20 minutes, there's a lot of weird threads that don't go anywhere about a lady who's being kicked out of her home at Christmas. Because
oh yeah, I assumed that was going to come back, and the villain woman doesn't really.
Mrs.
She gets attacked by the Gremlins, but she doesn't get. I thought she was going to learn the true meaning of Christmas. Truly, yeah. I thought she was going to be a Scrooge equivalent.
yeah. So Mrs. Deagle, it doesn't really turn to anything other than that when they first hang up the dog, Billy obviously assumes it's her. Yeah, I think those are sadly.
Why did they keep the woman in at all? The woman.
Well, she helps. Yeah, she helps set up who Billy is, though. I think quite clearly, doesn't she? And she sets up the dog, and like I don't know. It's and it is a fun scene when he goes into the bank and thingy. But Judge Reinhold's character as well. The guy he works with that comes on to Phoebe Cates' character Kate. And apparently there was a scene, and this one they actually shot. I think they said this one's a deleted scene somewhere. It's him he locks himself in the bank vault when the Gremlins attack, and just slowly goes mad, which is a really funny idea.
That's funny.
So yeah,
again, don't have the scene in the bar. I suppose the scene in the bar slightly sets up Billy and Phoebe Cates' characters' romance, but don't.
And it sets up her working it sets up her working in the bar for later, because obviously there's a very big set piece in that bar.
Yeah, but you don't quite. I guess you do need it, but I feel like bits of his bullying could maybe be trimmed from it. Then I don't know.
Yeah, I think there are definitely if you're going to cut those characters' conclusions out because your movie's too long, maybe cut out the setups too. I agree. Yeah, that must have been tricky though, because I think some of the setups also probably were part of the original pacing of the start of the movie. And I do actually think one thing I compliment this movie on is I could see somebody trying to argue that this movie is kind of slow, but I actually think it's perfect because they really build up the Gremlins in a really very clever way, like stage by stage. Gizmo to multiplying to the cocoons. It's a good, I guess, probably like 40 minutes into the movie before there's Gremlins. Like, it's a decent chunk of the movie that there's no Gremlins. In fact, I can probably look that up right now while I'm here. Let's see. Holy hell, no, it's nearly an hour into the movie, dude.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, 45 minutes into the movie, the first Gremlin shows up. Nearly 50. Oh, no, they're open. Here you go. 45 minutes, the cocoons are opening, and Gizmo looks upset. The first attack happens at 47 minutes. So nearly 50 minutes into the movie.
But that gives them time to... You really get a feel for him as a character.
Yes.
You get a feel for the situation. The situation builds really nicely. It's funny because I can't think of a better word, but I don't 100% know if horror's the right term, because it's like a specific 20 minutes is a horror film. And the reason it's a horror film is because they really devote the time when he goes into the school and finds the body, when she's attacking them, the whole thing with the YMCA, that it's really slow. It's horror-like. It's like, the walks take a good 20, 30 seconds to build. When the gremlin jumps out of the cupboard, like all of that's horror. And then it goes batshit crazy. So do you know what I mean? So I can't think of a better word, but it's like it's a horror movie, but it's like 3 different types of horror movie in one.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Suspenseful horror.
Well, it's kind of 3 movies. It's a family movie about a kid who gets a little pet that's a bit weird or whatever, and it's a horror movie for about 30-40 minutes, and then it's as you said, from the bar scene onwards. I mean, it's just batshit. I mean, that bar scene, if you enjoyed the bar scene, I tell you, you'll probably enjoy the second one, because there's a lot of that in the second one. There's actually, no, to be fair, the second one does a bit of everything, actually, thinking back to it.
I enjoyed that. I did enjoy the bar scene. I enjoyed it to a point. It wasn't my favourite stuff in the film. I'm still confused as to what, is Snow White like a beacon for them?
Yeah.
And I think, that's kind of the point I started earlier. I think the cinema thing stuck out so much to me because it was so like when they all came out of the water, I was like, oh, there's got to be something secret that we don't know about that will destroy them. Mogwai's got to do something, or they've really got to go for it. I was so intrigued as to how they were going to resolve it. Yeah, I think maybe I did make this point earlier. When
no,
it becomes apparent,
you did, but not as detailed. I agree. I think it is an interesting thing. It's like the film sort of cheats a little bit to solve the problem because it's quite an easy solution in the end. Is they all gather in one place. Which is, they sort of and how did Nadia put it? She put it as the Inglorious Bastards it, because that's what happens. The Inglorious Bastards, the theater explodes. So it's not the perfect solution, but I think what the smart thing they do is have Stripe get out of the building.
Yes, yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah,
because if you don't do that and the movie just ends with them exploding, that's a crap ending, isn't it? Really?
It would be. Yeah. So, but I'm saying, like, don't get them in the cinema at all. Maybe do something like when she started flashing them with the camera and really using the camera as like a gremlin gun type thing. I was like, oh, maybe they're going to do something with that then. Maybe they're going to, do it that way. I don't know.
Well, you do use the sunlight in the end, obviously, to take out Stripe.
Yeah. Yeah, on one, but I'm talking about how do you solve a problem of 1,000 gremlins.
Yeah, part of me did keep wondering when I watched this as a kid, is it... was it just wait till sunrise sort of situation? Would that not kill them? But then again, if they're all in buildings, then no, it wouldn't. They'd be alive still. You'd have to, it'd be tricky. But yeah, so I'm glad you took that from it though, which is that because that pool moment freaked me the fuck out as a kid, clearly, because that's where those nightmares came from, I guess. And it is very much that. It is very much that. Because honestly, I was convinced he was going to catch him. Like, I really didn't think, when I first watched this, the very first time...
And he was the last one at that point, wasn't he?
Technically, well, so...
Or was there the one in the school? What happened to the one in the school?
Yeah, exactly. This is a question that Joe Dante's been asked a few times. So I think there's a deleted scene where Billy kills that one. Originally, or something in the script that was that, but it got cut. So basically, Joe Dante's explanation is that one ended up joining up with all the others once Stripe multiplied. But yeah, Mrs. Peltzer kills the rest because she's a badass. Because honestly, that moment got such a cheer when we watched this in the cinema a year or two ago, whenever it was we last saw it, the 40mm print. Because it's such a great moment when she's just like a total badass. She chucks one in the fucking. In the food processor, she puts one in a microwave. She stabs one of them to death.
Stabs one with a knife. Yeah,
it's great. I love that scene so much. So yeah, the idea is that the pretty much Stripe is one of the last ones, if not the last one, depending on how you want to perceive the one from the school being kind of vanished, which is a bit of a plot hole, I suppose. The fact the director has had to clarify off, is clarified off camera, like not within the context of the film, but in an interview afterwards, what happened. It's kind of like okay, it's not really dealt with. It's not really dealt with in the movie, which is a shame. It's probably one of the only major plot holes in the movie. But yeah, with that scene when he's in the pool, in the building with the pool in the gym, and it's running towards. It's clearly making its way that way. It hops once or twice, and Billy reaches out to try and grab it. The moment it connected with the water, I was like, "Oh, they're screwed. They are so screwed." And then it's that shot, and I think it's one of the only stop motion shots in the whole movie. But there's the shot of the street, and one gremlin comes out of the shadows, and then two, and then three, and then about 20, and then 30. And you can just see how many of them there are, and that's really terrifying.
It's a great shot, yeah.
And it's a good use of stop motion because I've noticed a trend in this podcast of you pointing out stop motion as looking ropey or noticeably stop motion. You noticed it a lot, particularly in RoboCop with Ed 209. So I wondered if that shot would stand out for you here, or you just...
No, it didn't particularly. It's not as ropey. I just thought it was... I thought it was fun, but I think there's Yeah, I don't know why, but for this, I guess because maybe it's a film I've not seen before. It was just an 80s movie, and I didn't go, oh, that looks ropey. Whereas the stuff, I think where I've pointed it out before, Jumanji, there was some instances, and there was a specific. Oh no, it was RoboCop when I really noticed it, which I
Yeah,
hadn't seen before.
Ed 209 was the one you kept pointing out as being problematic, and which I don't disagree with. It's certainly the ropiest special effect in that movie by a modern standard, because stop motion sadly has a lower frame rate. Or looks, it has a choppier looking frame rate type thing than normal footage, so stop motion seems to stand out a lot. And obviously in this movie, a lot of it's practical in-camera puppetry, which is actually one of the things that makes it hold up, I think, rather than stop motion, because I think stop motion would really stand out. If they had any of the Gremlins in any of the close-ups be stop motion, you definitely notice. I think the reason they get away with that distance one in this is because it is a distance shot. I think that is 100% it. It's because it's not close up. You totally get away with it. All the close-ups are done in camera with puppets, and that is vitally important in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's probably it.
Yeah, but that must be the only reason. So sort of going back a bit, then how do we feel about it? Because I always wondered about the characters in this movie, because they're kind of. Billy's pretty much just generic nice guy. Like a lot of the characters are kind of like generic stereotypes, but I think they're unique enough to get away with it in a movie where the focus is actually on the action and the Gremlins and the plot moving forward.
I think you get away with it because the focus is there, and that's so, like you say, cartoonish. That helps you get away with it. The reality is, I think every character could be more fleshed out.
I think that's maybe because there are just too many characters.
I think it just feels again like stuff was cut out. Like the whole movie is, at the beginning at least, aching towards Billy not standing up to his dad, but Billy saying to his dad, your inventions are shit. Like it feels like that. No, but it does. Like it feels like the whole thing is building towards Billy gaining the courage to say something to his dad. Yeah. But that doesn't happen. I don't feel like, I don't. Despite this, there must be ways you could link what happens into some learning points for some of the characters, and it just doesn't. Fundamentally, none of them learn anything really. Billy learns that he could eventually take care of Mogwai, and he builds a relationship with him.
Yes,
but that doesn't then change his character.
No.
His character is the same. I suppose he's got the girl, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think if I was to criticize the movie, it's that character-wise, for whatever reason they get away with it. I guess it's because the focus is just elsewhere. But yeah, there aren't any clear character arcs, as you pointed out. No one really learns anything.
And you could have. I don't really know where they felt the need to get the dad away for the majority of the film. Like some of that conference stuff was quite funny. Like I think the competitions were more advanced than I thought. Like that was amusing, but they set up where he goes, oh, pets are pets. And if you had him consciously decide to replicate them and it go wrong, and then at the end him and his son work together and defeat the Gremlins, and then he goes, you know what? Maybe there you go. That's instead of Billy just thinking the inventions are shit, Billy's looking at the egg cracker, and his mum says, "Don't do it your way," and he's like, and he does something which fixes it, or it works better. But his dad doesn't want to listen, although that slightly goes against how caring his dad is. But whatever. So you'd have to work around that, but. Tries to do the pelts of pets. Gremlins go nuts. They work together. They solve the problem. In the end, they conclude to get him out of his dead-end bank job, and his inventions are going to be improved because he's going to work and listen to his son. Like you have to change some things, but already that's an arc. That's a journey more so than we get.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the second one might have cleaner arcs for the characters.
Well, but whilst I make that point, it not having an arc didn't hinder my enjoyment at all. Because
that's weird.
It's a goofy Gremlin movie. But if you're asking me specifically to think of the characters, that's my response.
Yeah, I agree. I genuinely like. I I've never had to sit down and think about them until now because I've always just taken the movie for what it is and enjoyed it. And I think that is the hallmark of a well-made movie, and that it's got flaws that it's good enough to sort of that are almost, it's the movie. The rest of the movie is so good they're almost irrelevant because everything else is firing on point. You know, and usually character is the death knell. We actually did a podcast earlier today. On Nothing But Static, where you record. This is one of several recordings we've done today. But the Nothing But Static episode we recorded where we talked about Apple TV shows. I talked a lot about how For All Mankind struggled because I was interested in all the plots and the music was good and the acting was okay, was functional, and the visuals were on point, but I just didn't care about any of the characters, and that was actually a massive hindrance to that. But it's really not a hindrance here. I guess it's because it's not so much that I guess the difference is in that I just don't care about them because they're really dull. It's not that these characters aren't interesting characters, I guess. It's more that they don't have a growth. That's, I suppose, different to being a cardboard cutout. Billy doesn't feel like a cardboard cutout. He feels like a person.
No.
And same with all the other characters, I suppose. Maybe that's the difference.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, because so they get away with it because at least the characters are interesting. They don't have to necessarily. I mean, the Futtermans are pretty interesting. That villain lady's pretty interesting.
I think I think it's that, but also it's a cartoon. It's a live action cartoon.
In many ways.
The entire thing is framed as that.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't moan that, the human in a Bugs Bunny cartoon wasn't characterized. You just run with it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a feature film, though. You'd expect that to be a barrier. I'm not suggesting it is or should be, but for whatever reason it isn't. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thought. In terms of the Christmas movie question, I think it's a Christmas movie simply because it's set around Christmas. It's primarily, the whole premise is it's a Christmas present gone wrong. It's the dog's hung up in Christmas lights. They're caroling, which, by the way, the caroling thing is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Like, it was just so unexpected at that point, because at that point that's before the bar scene, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Or is it after the bar scene? No, it's before the bar scene.
I think it's before, yeah. There's like a whole montage of Gremlins up to mischiefs.
Yeah, which has one of my other favourite bits, which is it's the one with the priest and the mailbox.
You know what I love about that one? It's so gentle. Well, apart from when the guy gets, torn into the postbox and seemingly killed, or at least his arms ripped off. But up until that point, it's just so gentle. It's just a nuisance. Like they're not killing anyone. They're not, they're just annoying the vicar a little bit.
But it's a little bit. What I love is how malicious the priest kind of is, because it spits out the letter, he puts it back in, it spits it out again. He starts to figure out something's wrong. The other guy comes along and goes, "Oh, you got a package, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh." Like, he says something like, he doesn't say like "go for it," but he basically says, feel free, give it a try. Like, he kind of knows, and he kind of lets him go for it. Like, I can't remember the exact line, but it's clear that he's got a funny feeling that something bad is about to happen, and he lets the other guy do it. Let me see if I can get the exact line. 1 second.
Mail something, do you? Just a last-minute package, Father. Be my guest.
Be my guest. There you go. That's great.
I think it's annoying, really, because I'm going to name it and not choose it. Part of me was tempted to choose this movie, but I'm not going to, because it's this. The next episode will be New Year's Eve, but no one ever disputes that Love Actually is a Christmas movie.
Yes.
Now, that's not got anything to do with Santa. It's not got anything to do with nativity plays.
Yes.
Okay, there is a nativity play in there. But something like Love Actually and The Holiday,
yes,
seemingly just being set in and around Christmas and using Christmas as a backdrop seems to be enough reason for people to count that as a Christmas film.
Yes.
So why do Gremlins, because they're action movies or horror movies... Gremlins and Die Hard, because they're action movies and horror movies. Why do they come under? Are they not, or aren't they? Are they a Christmas movie?
Yeah, I think there's an expectation that a Christmas movie has some element of feel good to it. I don't know why, but I had a debate last year with someone about Die Hard, and they said, basically they need a Christmas movie to make them feel Christmassy. And if it doesn't feel Christmassy, then it's not a Christmas.
Yeah, but that's so subjective because I know people that watch Die Hard every Christmas.
I know, and I agree. And I said so. And the thing is, genre is not subjective. You can come out of a movie and say, yes, that failed to make me feel Christmassy. That's fine, but it doesn't change the genre. And if a movie is a Christmas movie by genre, it's irrelevant whether it makes you feel Christmassy or not. It may have failed at achieving that with you, but that doesn't mean it's not that. Do you know what I mean? If a comedy doesn't make me laugh, I wouldn't say, well, it's a drama then. If the intent is comedy, whether I laugh or not, that's the intent. That's the genre of the movie. And if I don't laugh, I can't then say, well, it's a drama. So yeah, and I feel the same way about the debates, particularly with. I mean, I think this one is debated less than Die Hard. I think Die Hard is the ultimate. Is it a Christmas movie debate? But this definitely comes up regularly as debated as to whether it's a Christmas movie, which is just nuts to me. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I completely agree.
There's been a lot of talk about either rebooting or doing a new Gremlins film for years and years and years. I mean, even when I met Zach Galligan, the Billy Peltzer actor, a couple of years ago, he was talking about how they'd been talking to him and that they were looking to do something. Do you think that? I suppose you've not seen the second one, so you don't really know how the franchise ends. But do you think that's a good idea from your current perspective of just seeing the first one? Would you be into that? Do you think they'd ruin it with CGI?
It's difficult because fundamentally there's no reason why animal that attacks people and can replicate itself shouldn't work now. But it's the kind of premise where you feel like because like it would be on Twitter, it would be this is a town that gets attacked because no one else knows about it. Now you see a gremlin, you put that on Twitter, the police are coming, do you know what I mean? And I don't shining their bright lights on the town, which would affect the gremlins, for one. There's no reason why it shouldn't work now, but I struggle to see it in a modern context, I must admit, yeah. And I also think it's one of the things where I haven't seen the sequel, but this is good, it's fun. It doesn't... You could maybe reboot it, but it doesn't need to be by any stretch. No.
They're actually doing I forgot about this, HBO Max are doing a TV show, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're doing a prequel, an animated prequel series called Secrets of the Mogwai. So it's a prequel to the original 1984 movie. It's basically the story of how 10-year-old Sam Wing, who's the guy that owns the shop from the movie, meets the original Mogwai.
Cool. Well, the original one.
As in Gizmo. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, you don't mean so not like his dad, like literally the one in this film?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So that old man and Gizmo have grown up together, which makes a lot of sense because when in the end, I remember being really impressed by that as well. The end of the movie. So for those who don't remember, at the end of the movie, that guy returns and takes him back. Like you weren't ready to look after this, and I think there is actually a weird sort of society, like a what's the word I'm looking for, like a message, like a societal sort of point that this movie makes about we're not really taking care of the earth. There's a bit of that. There's like a, you know what I mean? There's a bit of social commentary. I guess that's the word I'm looking for, because he's basically like, I told you weren't ready, and he comes back and takes Gizmo back. And there's this really very effective scene where he talks to Gizmo, and it's very clear that Gizmo and him have a very, very strong bond and relationship.
Yeah.
And they do that really quickly. Because obviously in the opening scene, you don't see them interacting. So it's only in that end scene. So yeah, but I love that guy shows up and he's like, you taught him to watch TV?
I think what they do so effective is to make you believe that bond is them kind of talking in their own language.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, oh, they've got a language, they've got a communication just between the two of them, so you buy it a little more. It is a weird decision to not have him react with him at the beginning of the movie. But the whole beginning of the movie is odd anyway. Like it starts, and I was like, what the fuck is this film? Like,
yes, yeah. Nadia mentioned that opening scene is really tonally out of place for the rest of the movie, because it's like this smoky alley, and he's trying to convince this guy to buy his invention, but then he wants to buy a present for his son, and he sees the Mogwai, a thing that's never existed before. And it's like, it's just what I've been looking for. And it's like, you were looking for a creature that you've never seen before as a present for your son? Like, it's all very odd. That opening scene is really weird. Yeah, but then when it hits when that Christmas song hits, and we're in Kingston Falls, the town that the movie is set in, I think it feels more like that the movie sort of starts there a little bit. It's actually kind of the problem we talked about with, well, not specifically Jumanji solved this problem, but it's a problem we were describing when we did the Jumanji review that Jumanji avoided, which is those weird scenes that open movies that almost feel out of place, like they belong in a different movie.
Yeah.
They're important to set up the plot, but they're wrong. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's it. It doesn't work functionally, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see with the we'll see with the Gremlins prequel, but nothing else. There's nothing else to see.
I'm not so sure about Gremlins prequel, to be honest, but it might be quite fun.
Yeah, I've seen some posts. There's some artwork for it. Well, I guess we'll see. I guess that time will tell on that. The poster is really cool, actually.
What's the poster of?
The poster, it's the silhouette of Gizmo, and he's looking at what looks like just like a normal, like an office or a bedroom, where there's a desk, and it's just loads of red gremlin eyes, like just looking out at him.
Quite cool.
And it says 2021 though. That's far too far away.
Well, maybe that suggests they're really taking their time with the like effects and stuff.
Well, it's going to be animated apparently.
Cool.
So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I guess that's if it. I hope what I kind of hope from that is that it sparks enough interest for them to do another movie. I'd love a third one. Bring Zach Galligan back. Just do a third one. Let Joe Dante direct it. Let him do whatever he wants, because that's clearly what worked here. Like that he just got to do whatever he wanted. You know.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would have been nuts. What do we think to the Futtermans, and specifically the weird sort of veiled racism of the male of the main Futterman gentleman? His weird thing about his weird insistence that foreign-made things aren't, any good.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't so. The idea, especially knowing that because I assume, and maybe there'll be some trivia on this, but if a machine goes wrong, there's gremlins in the machine.
Yes.
Knowing that it came from that, the idea of a World War veteran who is obsessed with, slightly maybe it's suggested PTSD, but it's also slightly, just obsessed with the idea that there's gremlins in the machines and that kind of thing. Being paranoid about that and being proven to be right is an interesting idea, but some of it's played as prejudiced and he's against other foreign countries and stuff like that, which isn't fun and doesn't age well. But that's kind of the only bit of the film I think that doesn't particularly, as far as I'm aware, as far as I can think.
But I thought about this, and because we now talk about that, and we're like, yeah, he's kind of a racist character. But I was like, but a racist character, as long as the movie isn't saying he's right, that's okay. Like there are they did a movie last year, and the guy who played Eric Foreman played the leader of the Klan. Do you know what I mean? Him being in the movie doesn't make it right. Having a racist character in your movie doesn't make your movie racist.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Because that occurred to me too. Because he's saying all this stuff that's like, foreign cars. You want to buy, look at my truck. It's lasted 15 years. It's 'cause it's American made. It's a Kentucky Harvester. But having that character in your movie, as long as your movie isn't validating his point of view in some way, then I guess that's okay. Like it's not. Yeah. I mean, it's not okay. Yeah. But the movie, as long as the movie isn't agreeing with him, I don't. It's an interesting perspective for a character to have.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think it's odd in a way. Like it's quite a tragic character played for comic relief. Like that's a bit
that's what I mean. Like it's okay to have it because I think he's an interesting. Again, I don't have to agree with him to find him interesting as a character. Do you know what I mean? And as long as he's not doing anything in the movie that's so overtly racist that like it implies like you know what I mean? He's just a bit xenophobic. He's just a bit xenophobic, and they explain where his xenophobia comes from too. It comes from his having to go to war with other countries. It's left him feeling overtly proud of America, like in maybe an unfortunate way, and not so thrilled with people of other nations, or at least their building quality. Yeah, it's interesting. Nadia was also speculating that she found the Chinatown scene a little bit inappropriate because she's like, "Oh, he goes to Chinatown and it's a shithole," and I was like, "Yeah, but I mean that's not stereotyping. That's what happens when mass migration of any kind happens. The first place that they tend to move into historically is whatever the poorest area is, and then their kids move out because they grow up in that that country, go through the education system, get jobs, move out, and then eventually the parents follow. So what tends to happen? So for example, in New York, there's a section of New York that for a while was the Irish, and then they moved out, and then Italians moved in, and then it was Chinatown for a while, and basically every sort of 20 years, the population of that area changes to whatever the most commonly migrated country is. So at that time, so I was saying to Nadia, it's really interesting when you look at that happening. That's kind of fact rather than so maybe at the time. That was during the point when New York had a Chinatown that was booming before their second generation kids grew up and moved out, to more affluent areas. So I guess that's just I'm not saying it's acceptable that these communities get shoved into the poorest areas. I don't think we look after people who migrate to countries, but the movie's not making any comment about it either. The movie,
no, I don't think so.
The movie's not stereotyping. That's sadly what happens. You know what I mean? The movie's not making a comment on it. It's just, at the time, I assume that was the situation. I found that interesting. I did find that interesting. I don't think there's anything problematic about the movie otherwise, though, is there? I don't think.
I don't think so. No, it's almost, dare I say it, it almost feels like it was maybe slightly ahead of its time. That cartoonish live action violence became way more popular in later years and recently, and I thought I would get through, but I can't comment on that while I pee, Dan, because I'm not going to be able to hold in this pee at all.
I can't. Have you got any examples before you go of movies you think that sort of like more recent examples of this kind of cartoony violence?
Well, things like Shaun of the Dead. I know it's not recent. Things like, none off the top of my head because I really need to pee. But I'm trying to think. Well, I suppose things like. Well, then again, I suppose things like Home Alone, Mouse Hunt, all that sort of stuff was around this time.
After.
This 80s?
This is prior. This is pre all of that. Same writer though. Yeah.
So there you go. Like it just seems, that kind of thing is what I'm talking about. I think.
Yeah, I think cartoony violence is an interesting one, and I don't really know the history of it, but I do think that the certainly the tone they struck here, I guess, will have opened doors for other films to do it, because I also know a little bit of trivia ahead of time. This one of the ratings in America that's used now, which is their equivalent, I guess, of a 12A, was created because of this movie and I think Ghostbusters, which both had content that they couldn't quite give it like a PG rating, but they also didn't quite want to give it the R rating. So they ended up creating a whole other. Let me see if I can find the exact trivia about that so I can. Yeah, okay, so this movie and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom are credited with inspiring the MPAA to create the PG-13 rating, because many felt these movies were too violent for a PG rating, but not violent enough for an R. So it's a little bit like what happened in the UK with Spider-Man being the cause of a rating shift. So Spider-Man, Sony's first one, the Sam Raimi one, that in the UK famously was resulted in us getting an extra rating called 12A, because 12 was basically meaning a lot of kids couldn't go see it, and parents were complaining because the 12 rating was a strict, it's literally against the law for a theatre to let your child in at that age, and is enforceable with fines and all that stuff, so theatres weren't taking chances. And then Spider-Man came out, and a lot of parents complained because they want to take their kids to it, but they weren't backing down on it being a 12 because it's got some stuff they didn't think was appropriate. But they're like, okay, we'll let it be up to the parents then, and they created 12A, which means that we're saying this is a 12, but if accompanied by an adult, someone younger than 12 may enter, but they have to be with an adult. And supervised, so the adult knows what's going on. So that was the compromise, and that kind of happened earlier, it seems, in the States as a result of this movie in Temple of Doom. And I'm guessing that PG-13 rating has probably been used a lot since on movies like the ones you mentioned, like Home Alone and stuff. I think I don't know how I feel about cartoon violence, other than just that it's like I think it's kind of perfect, isn't it, for kids? Like it's kind of. It's a good way to get like some element of like sort of entertaining violence into a movie without like being Quentin Tarantino and gratuitous. And I think there's room for a middle ground, isn't there? You get movies that have no violence and movies that have Quentin Tarantino levels of violence. It's nice to have something that's in the middle, surely. Like I don't know if that's a problem. Not suggesting you were suggesting that, but yeah,
I know what you mean.
I'm glad they were able to come up with a rating solution to that.
Yeah, I think it's so funny, isn't it? Like I remember as a kid, like just constantly aching to be older, just to be able to not be limited to what videos and stuff I could buy. I never wanted to like wish my teenage years away, and I think if anything is true, it's the phrase "youth is wasted on the young" means nothing until you're older, and then you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I definitely had a sense of like wanting to be, because things like Bottom, the sitcom in the UK, like all of those live shows and stuff were 18s, and I really wanted to see them but couldn't buy them and stuff. But it's amazing how once you get past 20, you really forget the pain of that. Like I wonder now if it's an issue for kids. Like it just feels like it's not, but then I'm not a kid trying to get into a 15 film.
It definitely is. Having the job I have is tangentially related to cinema, and like Deadpool. It, the first one, lots and lots of issues with people trying to sneak into those movies, getting turned away for those movies that are really on the line. So like I said, Deadpool and It are movies that arguably appeal to a younger audience but are not appropriate for them, therefore become barriered, particularly for sort of 14-ish-year-old kids. That's a problem, because obviously those movies are all rated 15. So yeah, it's that's definitely an issue for sure, for realsies.
The real Z's.
So I'm trying to think if there's any other elements. Like, I guess all the action sequences. Any particular favorite in terms of action sequences? Because I mentioned that I like Billy's mum going nuts and killing all the gremlins. Any particular action sequence that stands out to you?
Yeah, Billy's mum was entertaining. Like I said, the swimming pool thing was entertaining. I think it probably is Billy's mum. I quite like just thinking like it's fucking weird cinema, like loads of bricks and projection halls and stuff like that. So I did quite like the cinema stuff, despite my confusion as to why all the gremlins went there. And you know what? The last one, seeing gremlin on gremlin and the cleverness of like reaching the water and you thinking, oh shit, but then Mogwai appears and sets the light on them and stuff. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think Gizmo's a really great character. We should talk a little bit about Gizmo, I suppose. He's an interesting one because he's the only one that's obviously good. The rest are pretty dickish from the start. I mean, they trick Billy into being fed. They break his clock so that it, that he feeds them. They are quite mischievous, but they're also very dangerous, obviously. Gizmo they seem to not like Gizmo. I know there's a running theme of that, isn't there? Like they're playing darts with Gizmo strapped to the board. He's adorable, and that scene is really horrible. So I don't know. Like he goes through some trauma, doesn't he?
Do you think they don't like him because they can see he's bonded with Billy? Do you think that's the reason?
Yeah, or maybe just that he's not as interested in causing chaos as them. Because Nadia thought they were acting like little shits because Gizmo was clearly Billy's favourite. Like, Gizmo sleeps in the bed with Billy and they're all, like, in a little box, like, next to his bed. Like,
Maybe, but then... I mean, I'm distracted because I'm reminded of the scene where it's almost like Gizmo shits them out. I know they appear off his back and stuff, but I was like, is he pooping out babies? Like,
yeah, that scene is quite surprising when you don't know it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And also that in turn made me remember how fucking useless Corey Feldman is in this.
Yeah, that kid, man, like he's like 90% of the problem. He makes those things. And he just goes up. He goes, does that mean I can have one now? And then when Billy's like, not really, he like goes, sits on the bed like, I don't give a shit then. Like, what a little snot.
And then he's just fighting him at his window later. It's really weird.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
they bring him back.
That montage is great. That montage. It also has them playing with the traffic lights. It also has them beating up Santa.
Yeah, you know what? That montage as well is a good contender for like favorite action scenes because it's just so beautifully played. Like they don't focus on anything too much, but you get a true sense of the terror. It's quite inventive. Nothing seems wasted. There's no repeats of the ways in which they're torturing people. So that's a really good action scene as well, I think.
Yeah, I like that they cut the brakes on the police car. That's fun. I like how Mrs. Beagle gets her comeuppance. They play with her bloody chair.
Yeah, and that's just quite fun because you don't quite realise what they've done until she sits in it and just like really cartoonishly zooms up the stairs.
And then like goes through the window at like a force. Like it's like.
And then the policeman's just like, "Is that Mrs. Deagle or whatever her name is?"
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Also, the comedic value of Phoebe Cates being trapped in that bar with them, where she's having to serve them.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a great joke. That idea that she's, like, just threatening and they're, like, scary. She's just, like, serving them. And she's, like, handing them drinks and lighting their cigarette. And, like, it's just so funny. It's just insane. Because it's just the visual of these monsters tearing the place up. And she's having to just, act as a bar, as the waitress,
Yeah. That's great. I would absolutely recommend it. And I had a really good time watching it.
Yeah, it's great. Should we do the triv?
Yeah, man.
There's
with your trivia stick.
I tried to cut this down so much because there's so much, but we'll get through as much of it as we can. So, did you recognise the Kingston Falls set at all, Chris? The set of the town sort of square.
Me particularly. No. Maybe it's a bit Groundhog Day if you're asking me to guess, but no.
It's the same set used for Hill Valley in Back to the Future.
Oh, fuck. I should have got that. Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. There you go.
Awesome.
In Cantonese, Mogwai means devil, demon, or gremlin.
Oh, nice. Clever.
It's clever. The scene in the department store where Stripe attacks Billy with the chainsaw was not in the script. It was added by director Joe Dante and Zach Galligan on the day as an homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Nice.
Although, I said this to Nadia, I said, what are baseball bats made out of? She said, wood, usually. And I was like, So what do you reckon a chainsaw would do to a baseball bat? She's like, cut through it immediately, or something like that. I'm like, that's what I thought. And then, like, the scene played, because I knew that scene was coming up. And we both just looked at each other. That doesn't make any sense at all. That chainsaw should have made such short work of that baseball bat. For those who don't remember, he comes in with a chainsaw, and he holds a baseball bat to protect himself with it. Doesn't make any sense. But half the movie doesn't, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think that's one that you just brush off because it's like, well...
Yeah, they've gotten away with so much of the batshit stuff in this movie. Like, the thing he breaks open the window to that department store with is a plastic toy. And it's like, that should not be strong enough to break all that glass. Anyway, the Santa speech proved controversial with studio executives. That doesn't surprise me.
There's a shock.
Yeah, they insisted upon its removal because they felt it was too ambiguous as to whether it was supposed to be funny or sad. Director Joe Dante, however, stubbornly refused to take the scene out, saying it represented the movie as a whole, which had a combination of horrific and comedic elements. Executive producer Steven Spielberg also did not like the scene, but despite his creative control, he viewed this movie as Dante's project and allowed him to leave it in. I like Spielberg.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Because you get the feeling that Spielberg would have had the overall say on that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Spielberg would have had the sway to make that call. It's produced by him. It's got his name on it. It's his funding, presumably. He would have just pulled it if he couldn't get it his way. But he trusted in the trusted in the director, and I'm glad he did.
That's really cool of him.
Yeah, I think so too. The theatre that blows up was subsequently involved in another accident when Marty McFly smashes into the front entrance in Back to the Future. The theatre. Go on.
Is there anything to state that Gremlins isn't a prequel to Back to the Future, and maybe Doc Brown went to the town for his experiments because he heard about these gremlin things?
Yeah, that would explain a lot, wouldn't it? Maybe it's just Hill Valley. It's called Kingston Falls here, but it was renamed Hill Valley after this incident. Yeah. I love that.
They tried to rebrand.
We haven't talked about this yet, but the newscast at the end as well, where the guy's talking about mass hysteria. Lots of people talking about little green men. I just love that they put it down to that. It's so funny.
But you kind of believe that is potentially what would happen.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, everyone would just put it down to mass hysteria for sure. Yeah. So, this is a really cool one. This is my favourite bit of trivia that I got from this, I think. In the original draft of the script, instead of Stripe being a Mogwai who becomes a gremlin, there was no Stripe at all. Gizmo was supposed to turn into Stripe the gremlin and be the villain of the movie.
Oh, wow.
That would have been...
That takes away some of the heart.
Yes. But
all of the heart.
Well, but how powerful would that have been? Your friend, your buddy Gizmo turning evil.
Yeah, but when your friend, your buddy Gizmo is killing people.
Yeah, that'd have been hard. That'd have been hard to take. Apparently, Spielberg overruled this because he thought Gizmo was cute and the audience would want him to be present at all stages of the movie. Apparently, this became stressful.
Thinking of that sweet, sweet merch money.
Yeah. This actually became stressful for Chris Wallace, who designed Gizmo Puppet only for the actions he takes part in the first half of the movie. So when they readjusted the script to have Gizmo present through the rest of the movie, they had to rework the puppet to do things it didn't do in the earlier parts of the movie. So grabbing onto, I guess, the thing for the light, driving the car, that sort of stuff. That's a fun bit. We haven't talked about that, actually. Earlier in the movie, they set up Gizmo, watching a movie about a race car driver, and he's, pretending to drive, and then at the end of the movie, he gets to run around in, a Barbie sports car, which I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
At least one of Phoebe Cates' screams in the scene at the tavern is genuine, because apparently an enormous cockroach crawled out in front of her during one of the takes.
I like that they kept that in.
Yeah, why not? What are you going to do? Zach Galligan recounted in an interview that when the movie was made, there was no CGI, so all the Gremlins were animatronics, each costing between $30,000 and $40,000. They were so expensive that when anyone left the lot after a day of work, security would have everyone open the trunks of their cars to make sure they weren't stealing them.
Oh wow, they did not trust people then.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're worth $40,000 each.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. This ended up being released on the same day as Ghostbusters. So I thought that was really interesting and ironic at the beginning of the movie when you talked about watching Ghostbusters and as an adult and not really jiving with it the same way.
Yeah, it certainly speaks to a trend at the time, doesn't it? They're tonally similar. I think I've not seen Ghostbusters in ages. Maybe people would disagree with that.
No, I think that's fair. I think that weird combination of being a family movie but with darker undertones. Yeah, I think that's exactly what Ghostbusters was. And also a little bit scary because ghosts and stuff in it. On one of the studio notes to director Joe Dante and Steven Spielberg on seeing the first cut of the film from the studio was that there were too many gremlins. Spielberg sarcastically suggested cutting them all out and just calling the movie People. That's amazing. I might have changed. Maybe that's my favourite trivia. I love that one. Little to no dialogue for the Gremlins and Mogwai existed in the script. In addition to instances of on-set rewrites add some of that to the script, the voiceovers from the Gremlins were mostly ad-libbed. So if Gizmo is saying bright light or repeating something someone else has said, they were performed, in a reaction or on set or in the recording booth. Howie Mandel apparently recorded all of Gizmo's lines. Yes, the Deal or No Deal presenter in the US, the bald guy with the weird beard. He's the voice of Gizmo. except for when he sings. It was done by a lady, apparently. Which, by the way, how great is that little... Oh, we haven't talked about the music. How good is the music in this movie?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's very, very cleverly used.
And me and Nadia we'd dance around the living room with the credits started.
Yeah, no, it's very funky, and like even the way they're all singing "Hi Ho" from Snow White is fantastic.
Yeah, and I love that. The detail I love about that is that Gizmo starts singing it too.
Yeah,
I think that's cute. I think that's adorable. Apparently, Howie Mandel actually went to the trouble of recording Gizmo's lines phonetically in the foreign dub of the movie. So when they localized the dialogue, they kept his voice because he phonetically learned how to do the different languages.
That's quite impressive.
Yeah, I think so too. Steven Spielberg apparently considered Tim Burton to direct the movie after seeing some of his early short films, but at the time he had yet to direct a full-length feature film, and as a result, Spielberg ended up going with Joe Dante instead.
Fair enough. Good choice.
Yeah, Joe Dante does a great job here. An earlier attempt to have monkeys play the Gremlins was abandoned because the test monkey panicked when made to wear a gremlin head. It was apparently... So basically what happened was they'd been trying to get them to use puppets instead of stop motion, goes the story.
Right.
But as a compromise, because the studio didn't want to do puppets, they wanted stop motion. The compromise was the studio said, let's try it. Let's get a spider monkey in like a gremlin suit. So when they tested this, it went crazy, tore the office apart, defecated everywhere, and apparently...
I mean, that just sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, it does. So apparently Joe Dante screamed at the trainer to get, to sort of calm the animal down, and then turned to the guy, I guess one of the people from the studio, and was like, "So puppets then?" Which is what he wanted all along. So yeah.
Yeah, how is that? How did anyone think that was ever going to work?
Yeah, no, I think it's mad. I'm also in agreement with you that... Well, what do they say? You never work with children and animals? They already had Corey Feldman in this movie, so...
Yeah, and look how that was working out.
Yeah, exactly. I do find him in the... He's fine. I do find him in the tree costume comical though. It's the most inappropriate costume to be lugging trees around in. Like his dad makes him go like put a tree in someone's car while dressed as a tree. I'm like, that is gonna be problematic.
Another element that's just not really considered again.
Yeah. Except for that it's kind of weird foreshadowing for the gremlin in the tree later.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the start of the movie, the movie theatre that Billy passes is showing A Boy's Life and Watch the Skies, which are actually the working titles of Steven Spielberg's other movies, E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, nice.
Thought that was a nice nod.
Very nice.
There you go. So, at the beginning of the film, Randall Peltzer makes his way to the curio shop in Chinatown, and a wrecked car is seen. It's got smoke coming out of it. This car is actually an AMC Gremlin. So there you go. That's a kind of car.
All right.
Kind of car that famously broke down a lot, I think. Chris Columbus' script went through a few drafts before the shooting script was finalized. His original version, we talked about this, had the Gremlins killing the dog and cutting off Billy's mom's head and tossing it down the stairs. These elements were never shot. They removed them before that point. The original script did have a scene where the Gremlins attacked a McDonald's, eating customers instead of burgers.
Makes sense.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to eat burgers, are they? Yeah. Apparently, Jerry Goldsmith wrote Gizmo's song, but Howie Mandel never got a chance to sing it. Obviously, instead, a female member of Goldsmith's congregation. Jerry Goldsmith must be some sort of gospel choir leader or something, I don't know, to sing Gizmo's song.
Yeah, I don't know either.
The lady in question had never worked in movies before. There you go. The Gizmo puppets were apparently completely frustrating to work with because they were smaller, so they broke down more because they had smaller parts. Consequently, this led to the crew hating Gizmo and actually making a list of ways to... horrible things to do to Gizmo, basically. One of which was...
when filming had finished?
Yeah, and one of which was throw darts at him. So that scene, they enjoyed.
Is that why that scene is in the movie?
It's unspecific here, but it's implied a little bit, yeah. It doesn't actually outright state that in this trivia, but yeah. Let's have a look.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah, there are several references to E.T. in this movie. First of all, when the gremlin cuts the phone line, he says, "Phone home." Which is a little
Nice, I
nod to-
hadn't noticed that.
But also, later in the movie, when they're in the department store, he puts his head through, and it's Warner Brothers toys either side. Obviously, it's a Warner Brothers movie, so Bugs, Daffy, but there is also an E.T. toy in the shot. So there you go.
Nice. Nice little
Um,
nods.
yeah. Apparently, when Murray, Mr. Futterman, Dick Miller's character, said we should have got on a Zenith, he's referencing the fact that in the 1980s, Zenith were one of the few electronics brands that still were made in the US.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Uh, dir- Yeah, director Joe Dante prefers Gremlins 2, the new batch, to this movie. We've already covered
So
that. But...
it's just a bit more batshit crazy from what I can tell.
It's way more batshit crazy because he basically turned it into a parody of this movie because he didn't. I don't think he particularly wanted to do a traditional sequel.
Right.
So it's kind of a parody of this one, but in the funnest way. It's a batshit crazy doesn't even cover it. I don't think. I think this movie's batshit crazy. That movie is off the fucking rails in the best way. I love both dearly. They're extremely different, but if you're going to do a sequel, that's the fucking way to do a sequel, for sure. So moving on, we'll do it. We'll cover it. It's not the second one's not really a Christmas movie, so we can probably cover that in a handful of episodes down the line. At some point, we need to tackle Short Circuit too as well, because that's another one where the sequel is a bit off the rails.
We've done a few now with sequels: RoboCop, Toy Story, these.
Yeah, we should. At some point, we'll have to start coming back to some of these. I'm glad we haven't done them straight away, though. I like that we've got those on the back burner.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll get to them, I promise. The novelization explains that Mr. Wing's grandson was severely punished by his grandfather for this back alley sale.
Yeah, it is a bit like that's not really touched upon. Like even when he comes in at the end, he's not like, "Oh, pissed off about this."
Well, no, because it wasn't. I guess he knows that Mr. Peltzer just the kid came and offered it, and he just bought it. Like he does say this is the gentleman I bought Gizmo, and he goes, "I bought" is a strange way to phrase it, or something like that. He makes a little jibe, but he doesn't say anything else. It's The idea of these creatures was actually born in a loft in Manhattan's Garment District that was home to New York University Film School graduate screenwriter Christopher Columbus. So by day, where he was staying in the Manhattan Garment District was nice, but at night it sounded like a platoon of mice would come out and you'd hear them skittering around in the blackness. He found it really creepy. So it was the inspiration for the Gremlins movie. There you go.
Fair play.
Amongst others, some of the Gremlins voices were actually performed by Michael Winslow, and if that name sounds familiar but you can't place it, he's the gentleman from the Police Academy movies that makes all the sound effects with his mouth.
That makes even more sense.
Yeah, so there you go. Let's see. Originally planned and scheduled for a Christmas release, the movie was rushed into production shortly after because Warner Brothers discovered it had no major competition against Paramount Pictures' Indiana Jones and the Temple. Oh, wait a second, because it did come out against Ghostbusters. This is an interesting one, because it says, so the movie was rushed into production shortly after Warner Brothers found out it had no major competition against Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom or Columbia Pictures' Ghostbusters for the summer movie season. Oh, it was planned and scheduled for a Christmas release because the two big movies were coming out in the summer. Right. But later on, there's a piece of trivia that explains that sadly they didn't get it out in time for that, and it came out in the middle of the summer.
Right. Speaking of Indiana Jones, I find it weird that they gave the radio guy such a personality, but we never saw him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like we see the poster, we see all the signs.
Yeah, that's true.
We never actually then meet him.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, but even though it was set during Christmas, as I mentioned, this movie was actually released on June 8th. So there you go.
Fair play.
The fourth highest grossing film of the year.
Wow, fair play.
That's not bad, is it? Fourth? Three.
No.
1984 behind. I presume behind Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones. I assume.
Yeah, presumably.
Executive producer Steven Spielberg had a great working relationship with Christopher Columbus, the screenwriter, on this movie, and produced his next 2 movies, The Goonies and Young Sherlock Holmes. Well, we know how that one turned out. Not so well. Yeah. Apparently Columbus had spent 3 years working on these 3 movies, as in those 2 and Gremlins. Apparently, to create the effect of the small furry balls that expanded and started to grow to be the new Mogwai, they covered balloons in hair and then filled them. Worked. Looks good.
Yeah.
That scene's actually quite gruesome. It's when their ears start to unfurl from their heads. That's pretty gross.
It's quite body horror, isn't it? It's like, ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. Actually, I think the cocoons are pretty grim too, actually. I remember when I first saw the cocoons being a bit grossed out by those. What do you think the idea that he just, like, Billy's small town, Billy's answer is, I'll take him to the science teacher at the local high school?
It's a bit odd considering we know he's not at high school anymore.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I feel like they could have written something else around there that's less odd. They don't even set up that they particularly had a good relationship in school because, like, he's doing nothing related to science. Which, again, if you went down the route of actually he should be an inventor, would make that bit make more sense.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I like that teacher though. I like that character. He comes to a fun end, and I also love the scene where he's walking around and the Gremlins friend is trying to give him a Snickers because it just allowed me and Nadia to make lots of "you're not yourself when you're hungry" jokes. Which is,
yeah, that is amusing.
Yeah, we enjoyed that. We had a lot of fun making jokes during that scene. I don't know.
It's a good advert campaign. It's a fun in joke to make.
Yeah, and I don't know if that ad campaign exists in America, but for those who don't know, in the UK, there's Snickers adverts where like someone is screaming and then they eat the Snickers and they become someone else. So there was one where it was Mr. T yelling at someone, and then when they ate the Snickers bar, they just turned into like a normal person.
And then it says you're not you when you're hungry.
Yeah. So there you go.
Good campaign.
It's good stuff. So apparently Steven Spielberg changed the design of the Mogwai from moment to moment in the build-up, greatly upsetting Chris Wallace, the Chris Wallace's workshop. Initially, he suggested they change the color to brown and white rather than all over brown. He then changed the ears to hairless, and then he wanted Gizmo to be more of a sidekick to Billy's hero, which really doubled the work on the overstretched workshop. We talked about that a bit earlier, because when he says he wanted to make him more of a sidekick to Billy's hero, that's what doubled the work, because it meant that Gizmo was in more of the movie after that than he was originally intended to be. So yeah, but I think the move from all brown to brown and white was a smart move, and I think the hairless ears thing was a smart move too. I think he's a very cute little puppet in his final design.
Yeah, you can see, you kind of get, because at first you're like, why is the dad taking this thing home? But then you kind of get it when you see him and he is all cute and furry.
Yeah, my toy Gizmo is very cute. Did you recognise the designs in this movie when you saw them? You're like, oh, that's what they look like.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh, right, that's what that is.
Because you've probably seen the designs before, I assume.
Yeah, in various places, absolutely.
Yeah, because I've got a stuffed animal version of Gizmo, so I assume you must have seen that on my shelf and taken it in, even if you didn't know what it was.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mentioned this on last week's podcast, but mine is signed.
Yeah, nice. By Billy.
By Billy Peltzer. He's very nice. And he was very insistent, despite press rumours, he did not sleep with Phoebe Cates. Apparently...
Did you bring that up with him, or was
no, there was a Q&A. Apparently he gets asked that a lot. Wow. Because Phoebe Cates was a bit of a sort of heartthrobby sex symbol at the time, after her work on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She was apparently sexual awakening for many boys, teenage boys in the 80s. Who knew? Well, anyone who's seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I guess. Anyway, so there you go.
Little spoilers to what I'm choosing for next week. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Sorry, there's so much trivia, man. You can tell. I bet you can tell why it took me so long to get ready for this. Now there's so much.
That's fine. Don't worry.
So Chris Columbus wrote the script for this movie and directed Home Alone 1 and 2. All 3 of those movies contain a clip from the movie It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, that's a nice touch.
Yeah, I guess that's like I guess he's a big fan of It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life is a great movie.
Yeah, fair play to him.
So apparently that during one of the night shoots, the problems with the Gremlins puppets were so severe it gave the cast enough time to fall asleep on the set during a delay.
Jesus.
Imagine that, just like falling asleep in like the theatre set or the car or the bar set or something. Just 'cause you're just waiting.
Worse if they're like, stood up at the time.
Yeah. So the actor that plays Billy's dad, Hoyt Axton, apparently he followed the basic outline of the script, but is said to have improvised nearly all of his lines.
Why?
I don't know. But actually, when I read that, I went, that actually makes a lot of sense, because there's a lot of like, he's describing his gadgets. Like, the way he talks does feel absurdly naturalistic for the rest compared to the rest of the movie. Like, when he's first talking to Mr. Wing, and trying to negotiate buying Gizmo, and he's showing him the Peltzer, what was it, the bathroom buddy, and the toothpaste squirts all over him, and he's very naturalistically is like, that's not a problem at all. You'll notice it cleans up very easily. And that just, I don't know, the way he says it and the way it comes out feels very natural and like on the spot. And I think a lot of his dialogue must be.
That's pretty cool.
Did you notice the time machine gag, actually, while we're on the subject of him?
I don't think so.
So when he calls Billy's mum and he's at the convention and he mentions they're a bit more advanced than him, in the background of the first shot, there's a guy in a time, the time machine prop from the Time Machine film, or similar to. I don't think it's the actual one. It's like a recreation model of it, and it's whizzing up behind him, and then it cuts back to what's happening in the house, and then when it cuts back, there's just smoke where that was, and two people looking around confused, trying to figure out where it's gone.
That's amazing.
It's such a good background joke. I love it so much. Yeah, it's great. This is officially the last movie to have ever been shot on the Eastman Color 125T film stock, which was apparently discontinued shortly after this movie was made. That's interesting. I bet there are a lot of movies from this era going into the 90s where they stopped shooting them on certain stocks as they slowly started to go out of business, and then, or even more so in the thousands as movies started to switch to digital.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Yeah. So Billy was apparently originally more of a typical nerd. Not only travelled around most of the town with two sort of like companions during the madness, but he apparently was wielding a sword for a lot of it.
I quite would have wanted to see that version.
Yeah, apparently he wanted, he one of the people he would travel around the town with was like a bully turned emergency ally sort of premise. Like someone who like bullied him.
See, that would suggest an arc though. Which
yeah,
really get.
It sounds like this movie went through a lot of changes reading this trivia. Yeah, so there you go. While the filmmakers were making this, they had the idea to use Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs as the movie to be shown in the theatre because Disney released it on December 21st, 1937 as a holiday movie event, and since this story took place during the Christmas season, there's no chance that Walt Disney, had he been alive, would have liked or allowed for that to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
no chance. That movie was
this
like
movie doesn't seem like his jam.
Yeah, but also I think Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was like his beloved masterpiece. He that was his passion project. The same way that Pixar struggled to convince anyone that it was worth making a feature length computer animated movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was actually referred to for a long time as Walt Disney's folly, because they honestly thought he was going to make the company go bust making Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because nobody thought kids were interested in watching a feature-length movie.
Wow.
So
fair play.
So he was
fair
very
for sticking with his guns.
Yeah. So he was very, very protective of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That was his baby. So yeah, he definitely wouldn't have approved of its use here. That's for sure. So yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but one of the deleted scenes shows Gerald, Judge Reinhold's character, hiding out in the bank vault while the Gremlins ran wild and slowly losing his sanity. The official comic strip adaptation includes a few other scenes that weren't in the movie, so they must have got it from the script while they were drawing it, and then it changed, including Billy's mother asking if the Mogwai was a rat, the Mogwai using Randall's bathroom buddy, thus earning his name, Gizmo. Also a lot more emphasis on the removed subplot of Mrs. Deagle trying to buy up all the property in the town presumably to sell it or something. There was probably some plot about that. A scene of Billy finding and throwing juice on the Mogwais that has no effect on them, so it's just water. Mr. Hansen's students were a bit more Billy's age in the comic version. And Gizmo and Kate tried to shut down the fountain and end up turning on the lights in that version of it. And then Billy smashes Striped Skeleton with the baseball bat.
It's better. It's better with Mogwai saving the day.
I
would have liked to have seen more of the villainous woman buying up the property, because then the idea could be that she owns all this property that's now destroyed. And
that's fun.
Her getting her comeuppance, but
that's a fun idea. So as already mentioned, the original rough cut of this movie ran 2 hours and 40 minutes. Holy shit! Judd Nelson and Emilio Estevez were considered for the role of Billy, not Arnold Schwarzenegger for once. Call that a victory.
And not Chevy Chase.
Yeah. Another funny background gag is the Deagle real estate sign. The hours of operation are only between 10:30 and 11:15 Monday to Friday. That's good. That's great. Apparently, Chris Wallace's workshop began to understand the premise of Gremlins when they were doing the carol singing Gremlins. Once they were dressed in human clothing, Wallace exclaimed, "They're parodies of people." There you go. It's a funny scene. So while screenwriter Chris Columbus sold this script to Steven Spielberg, along with the screenplay for The Goonies, his career didn't really take off until after the massive success of Home Alone 1990, which he both wrote and then directed. So there you go. So he'd had these mild successes, but it didn't do his career much until afterwards. The term gremlin is a neologism? I don't know. Originally coined by Welsh author Roald Dahl.
So,
yeah,
who knew that?
Yeah, his story Gremlin Law is about a fictitious group of mischievous elves that were said to cause unexplained damage to Royal Air Force planes. And actually, that piece was actually commissioned by the Disney company to be a film, but it never got made.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
There you go. The dog's reaction to Gizmo when he first comes out of the box is completely genuine. The dog reacted very, very poorly to the puppet. So the growling and the barking was real. John Pertwee was considered for the role of Mr. Wing. That would have been
cool.
That would have been cool. Quite different though to what they did, I think.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the character would have been called Mr. Wing should John Pertwee have gotten the role. Also,
very true.
Famous. I know him more as a voice actor, but famous Asian actor Mako was also considered. I mostly know him for his work on Avatar: The Last Airbender, where he's very, very good. Also, I feel like he voiced Splinter at some point in a Turtles movie. So there you go.
Cool.
Judge Reinhold's, Edward Andrews, and William Scholitz's role were reduced when the movie was edited. Those were the three characters that suffered the most, it seems. Although it doesn't actually say which characters they play, and I know Judge Reinhold was. Oh, they're the people that work at the bank. Right. So Edward Andrews.
Yeah, I was going to say they're the bank people, aren't they?
Yeah, Edward Andrews is seemingly the owner of the bank. Judge Reinhold is the sort of young executive that's a bit of a hot shot. And then William Scholzer, or whatever, I can't pronounce his surname. He also worked at the bank, it looks like, from the picture. He doesn't look immediately familiar to me. But there you go. He worked with Joe Dante again in the end. He worked on Inner Space, which is another favourite of mine from that era. We'll come back to that maybe at some point too. Gizmo spends the first night with Billy. The piano they play together, they eventually end up playing the same tune from Close Encounters.
Nice.
There you go. God, I promise we're getting to the end. This is too much. I should have cut some of these.
It's fine. No, it's a lot. I was trying to think of how to be like, no! It's all good. It's not your fault. It's all interesting.
It is all interesting, but it's a lot, isn't it? So the film opened against Ghostbusters, and while that movie did do better in most cities, in New York, where people were furious about having their traffic disrupted by the Ghostbusters shoot that had happened the year before, Gremlins did a lot better.
That's amazing. Jesus.
New Yorkers were really mad at Ghostbusters because it caused a lot of problems.
That's unbelievable that they still remembered though and refused to see the movie in protest.
Yeah, it was only a year later from shooting it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it must have caused some real problems. Apparently, one of the reasons the no bright lights rule was put in place was simply to help hide the special effects. They planned that in advance, thinking that the darkness would camouflage a lot of the special effects. Smart.
Yeah. That works well, I think. I think it does do that.
Yeah. According to director Joe Dante, here we go. We talked about this. According to director Joe Dante, the Mogwai / Gremlin that Billy left with Mr. Hansen later met up with Stripe's gang and joined them in terrorizing the town before being blown up with the rest. So I found this one really interesting. Gizmo was originally, in the end, Gizmo obviously pulls the blinds to expose Stripe to the sunlight, but originally, however, there were 2 window blinds, and Gizmo pulls the first one, and Billy then pulls the second one. That was actually what they shot, but the scene was edited because Spielberg believed that Gizmo should be the true hero of the movie and not Billy. So then it was just...
Which I would agree with. I think that's a wise choice.
I agree. Yeah, Spielberg sometimes makes some very smart choices with these things. I remember he meddled with the ending of Paranormal Activity, and his version of the ending is not as good as the original planned ending. So he's not always on the money, but he certainly was right there. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. Let's have a look. There's 2 more left. Let's see. Oh, we've already talked about that one, so only 1 more left. Oh, yeah. After Lynn Peltzer stabs the gremlin to death in the kitchen, there was an unused effect of the gremlin trying to pull the knife free from his body, like he was pinned to the counter by the knife. The effect was considered too distressing, and the shot was omitted. However, you can see over her shoulder, as she microwaves the other gremlin, the puppet reaching back.
I bet that was ridiculously distressing.
Yeah, that's pretty horrific, for sure.
Wow.
I'm kind of seeing if I can bring it up now. I've got the laptop in front of me. I'm just trying to see if I can see it like in the background, reaching for it to see if it's as bad as it sounds. How much did you love how they hid the gremlins, by the way, when they first came through?
Yeah, that was great.
Because when you first see one, it's in the kitchen.
Really, really nicely done.
Yeah, because you get the quick shot of it in the school with Billy, one of them, but only for a second. You don't get enough chance to properly look at it. Then you get a really good close up of one, in the kitchen when Mrs. Peltzer's fighting them. Oh God, you're right. I'm sorry. They're right. You can literally, in the background of the entire microwave scene, you can see the puppet of the one she stabbed trying to pull the knife out of its stomach to free itself. That's horrendous.
I'm glad they didn't close in on that.
No, it's really bad. That's
crazy.
Man, I've never noticed that before, but it is absolutely there. And it's not even like slightly over her shoulder obscured or whatever. It is clear as goddamn day. Wow. Anyway, yeah, so I like that when she's moving through the house, there's like the shadowy version of the gremlin that you see before you see the real one. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, but that's when it's like at peak horror movie, isn't it? Really?
Yes, when she's like moving through the house and like and it starts the record, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know where they are. And then there's the one in the tree, which Billy. I love that as well. They set up that sword earlier in the movie. Billy knocks it over, so that when it happens later on in the movie, you're not just like, where did he get a sword from? So yeah, there you go. That's it.
Wow. There we go.
Sorry, that was like 25 minutes of trivia. I'm so sorry. There was so much.
It's all good.
And would you believe it, Chris?
Yeah, but I don't know what you would have cut.
Well, that's the thing is, a lot of it was really interesting. Genuinely, I cut so much as well. I cut like half the trivia that's on the IMDb page for it. It took me ages. It took me ages to sift through all that, as I'm sure you can imagine.
That sort of movie. It
is that sort of movie, and I'm sure you can now understand why we started recording a little bit late.
Yeah, absolutely, I can.
Yeah, cool. Anything else to add, or have I just exhausted you with Gremlins facts?
No, I think I nothing to add, but what I said before. I think it's a great movie. I think if you've not seen it, you should definitely check it out. Although I'm sure if you've got this far on this, you've seen it.
I would hope so. I wouldn't want anyone to hear all of this discussion and then go check out the movie. That would be a shame.
No. That
would
would
be
be
a
as
shame.
good.
Yeah.
No, I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased we watched it, and my big takeaway is that I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to.
That's great. I'm really glad that's the case. So, would you be excited to watch the second one at some point soon?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, more so than Short Circuit 2.
Yeah, well, I think we've had a pretty long run of good movies, so I think at some point soon that levy's got to break and we've got to watch something we don't like, because at the moment, like the last handful we've watched, I'm pretty sure, what was the last bad one we watched?
Yeah.
Mouse Hunt?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, the first one we didn't both the last one we didn't both recommend. Yeah,
because then it was
maybe that affects.
Because then it was Quick Change, 10 Things I Hate About You, RoboCop, Toy Story, Jumanji, and this. Oh, and Snowman. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, maybe then I'll go with, because I had two. I've been weighing up between two, and I'd settled on one, but I'm pretty sure we both like it, so I might go with one that.
Don't let that influence you. Just do whatever you were gonna go with. Like, don't let that influence you. But at some point, we've got to break that streak.
I'm tempted to go with the other one now, though.
I mean, don't let that be the guiding thought, though. Do it because that's what you want, not because you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't do it just because.
Oh no, I'm happy to watch it. Basically, I was like, because it's New Year's Eve, so I was like, right, what films are set at New Year? Nothing of interest apart from the Doctor Who movie, which I thought might be quite cool. So then I'm like, well, okay, what films are set like around parties or like, you know? So I had it narrowed down between two. One I think might be... Okay, let's go for the one that... Because I can't remember. So the one that I know is good and just haven't seen in a while, and it's all centered around a party, so it could be quite fun to watch. And one that I remember loving and really enjoying as a young adult me... I remember really enjoying this film, but even at the time, I remember thinking it had some structural problems. And every time I've thought of it as older, I've thought, I wonder if that holds up. So we're gonna go for that one, Dan.
Oh dear, what are we watching, Chris?
Any guesses?
No, none whatsoever.
We're watching. I don't know if this is how you say her name correctly, but Elisha Cuthbert movie, The Girl Next Door.
Oh god,
Eliza? Is it Eliza?
Alicia.
Elisha Cuthbert in The Girl Next Door.
Oh,
Have you seen it?
No.
Right. Okay.
I know of it. I know of its existence because I know that a lot of teenage boys were into this movie because of Elisha Cuthbert being in it. So it got mentioned.
Which isn't necessarily where I'm coming from. Just to say, like, I enjoyed the soppiness of it.
I remember from high school this movie was much discussed, but I never got around to watching it. So, all right. That's Happy New Year's, everyone. The Girl Next Door.
Hey, I was
joking. I'm joking.
Do you want to know what the other one was?
Go on.
Do you want to know what you could have been watching?
Go on.
The other one, which until you'd said about the run of good movies I was going to pick, was Superbad.
Oh, Superbad's a good movie. Yeah, it's a great movie. Yeah, that's on my list at some point, but it's a good one. So let's watch something that's probably not likely to be as good. We're going to watch...
Right, we'll go with the... Yeah, I think I can say with some certainty it's not as good as Superbad. But yeah, The Girl Next Door is the next film.
Jesus, that's going to be fun. I'm excited. So there you go, everyone. Thank you very much for putting up with us and all the trivia. And I hope you all watched and enjoyed Gremlins.
Yeah, I reckon there'll be another bold prediction. I reckon there'll be less trivia for The Girl Next Door.
Yeah. So sorry. I think if I'd have had more time and I hadn't been rushing, I'd have found a way to cull some of those. But
it's not your fault. No, I genuinely think all of them are interesting. It's always a difficult one with the trivia because I probably sound like I'm not that interested, but there's very little more to say than oh cool.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, it's one of those things. But anyway, so thanks everyone for listening. We're going to leave you now with that thought. Come back in a week's time to hear us discuss The Girl Next Door. I tell you what, of all the movies I was expecting you to pick, I wasn't expecting that one to come up anytime soon. But I'll be honest with you, a part of me had forgotten it existed, to be honest with you, Chris. So yeah, let's do it. I'm curious. I to be fair, I was curious at the time because I thought the plot sounded kind of weird. And especially when I found out it was a bit romantic, I was like, really? That movie? Because
I think she's a porn star. I can't really remember.
Yeah, she's a porn star moves in next door. That's the premise.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I saw the trailer. I remember seeing the trailer in front of something else and being like, okay, so it's that movie. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because that's as much as I know about it. That is as much as I know about it.
We've had classic after classic. Think of the run of RoboCop, Toy Story,
10 Things I Hate About You,
The Snowman. Yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You even is a classic.
Yeah.
What was before 10 Things I Hate About You?
Quick Change.
Right. Okay. So 10 Things I Hate. 10 Things I Hate
Quick
About
Change
You
was a film we recommended, but it is decidedly not a classic.
It's not a classic. Yeah. 10 Things I Hate About You, RoboCop, Toy Story, Jumanji, The Snowman, Gremlins. It's time for The Girl Next Door, Dan.
That is the logical next step. Well, the funny thing is, I nearly suggested after Toy Story, before I realised probably should be choosing Christmas movies. I thought about Small Soldiers.
Ah, yeah, I've never seen that.
But interesting, I realised today, Joe Dante, same director.
I can't do that for a little while then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll have to leave that one for a bit. I'm not watching another Joe Dante movie so soon after the first one.
At one point I was thinking about Love Actually, because it's still Christmas Eve. It's not that Christmassy, but no, now I am excited for The Girl Next Door.
It's going to be an interesting one. All right, we'll come back in a week's time for that, unless you have us on Patreon, where you can pay as little as $1 a month and get access to these episodes early. Presumably, that one will be already up if you're hearing this on another platform. Unless you're hearing this a week early on Patreon, in which case, wait.
Yeah, potentially, because we've recorded to go ahead because of Christmas, so Christmas might stop early releases, but we shall see.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't.
Yeah, hopefully not. So yeah, enjoy. But otherwise, you can get us on Twitter at Dan Doolan, at C Billingham with 2 M's, on YouTube, Nothing But Static UK. What else? I think that's everything. Nothing But Static.co.uk. Mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you want to send us an email. I'm pretty sure that still works.
You can find all of Nothing But Static, Stephen University and stuff on Spotify and other homes of podcasts.
Yeah, if you want to help us out, 2 things. If you're looking at us on YouTube right now and that subscribe button is red, that means you are not subscribed. Please do it. Click on the button. Won't cost you nothing, except for if you don't, I'll kick a puppy.
Don't kick a puppy.
It's Christmas. I should definitely kick a puppy. And then,
unbelievable.
If you're listening to us on Google Play or iTunes or any of those things, give us a review. Those matter.
Anyone at this point that isn't subscribed, I tell you what, Dan, you don't need to say hit the button, because the minute we revealed that next time we're talking about The Girl Next Door, that button got clicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So yes, please feel free to come check us out, and if, like I said, any comments you can send us on any of the things I just mentioned. So that has been everything. Chris ends this one, if memory serves. So I'm gonna leave it to you, Chris. Take us home.
I'm Chris Billingham.
I'm Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.